Light at the end of the tunnel as long-awaited legislation has come to Stormont today. The sentencing bill was brought before families, including that of Lisa Dorian, who have campaigned for reforms. Here's Justice Minister Naomi Long.
I think as anybody who's listened to the debate will see, there's a lot of goodwill behind this bill. The committee are really open to what we're trying to do, and it's particularly important to me because I gave my word to families in the last mandate about things that I wanted to do.
The Ulster Farmers Union says there's a sense of horror after 13 lambs were killed at a farm in County Down. They were found with broken necks on the Drumsesk Road in Rostrevor over the weekend. Glenn Cuddy from the UFU says it'll have been a hugely traumatic event for the farmer.
A great deal of personal distress for this farmer that this would happen to someone. And so as someone who would rear livestock, you'd never think that somebody actually would do this on a farm.
Meanwhile, the USPCA says such things impact not only animal welfare, but also a person's livelihood. £53 million is to be given to people who rely on oil central heating due to the rise in prices since the war in Iran began. The cost of Brent crude has gone up by over a third in the last month. However, Stormont's Finance Minister John O'Dowd described the package, which will see £17 million come to Northern Ireland, as extremely disappointing.
I noted during the Keir Starmer's press conference that he said the economy is now in a better state than it was during the Ukraine war. During the Ukraine war, there was a much better financial package brought forward than has been brought forward today. So if the economy is in a better state, then the funding coming forward should match that.
And babies could be liars before they even turn 1. A quarter of infants start to understand deception by 10 months, rising to half at 17 months. That's according to research from the University of Bristol. They found some babies are skilled in exaggeration, denial, and pretending not to hear an adult speak.
Agri-News with NIE Networks. Our electricity network is taking a huge leap forward with the big network rebuild. See nienetworks.co.uk.
The College of Agriculture, Food and Rural Enterprise has launched new water quality training for agricultural professionals in Northern Ireland. It aims to help advisors and consultants support farmers to protect rivers and waterways. The training focuses on practical steps such as improved nutrient planning, precision fertiliser application and reducing pollution from farms. The programme forms part of the Sustainable Agriculture Programme, which aims to promote more sustainable farming practices. CAFRE says the training will help industry professionals share best practice with farm businesses across Northern Ireland.
Downtown weather.
A mainly dry night with just a few spots of rain, mild but windy, with lows of 8 degrees. That's the latest. I'm Chris Brennan.
Blue skies when you turn your radio on to your local #1 Downtown Radio. Downtown Radio.
At the beginning of 1976, if you'd asked someone, what's on the radio? They might well have said, not very much. But within a short space of time, there would be a brand new radio station, which in weeks, months, and now 50 years would change the way that radio was created and delivered to the local audience. I'm John Rosborough, and for the next 2 hours I'll be telling the Downtown Radio story in celebration of its 50th birthday on March the 16th, 2026. It's a story in 4 chapters, so stay tuned for memories and sound memorabilia galore. First though, let's take a little time to find out how radio started here over 100 years ago and then developed into the 1970s. Radio to serve the city of Belfast began as a commercial enterprise in September 1924 with a station called 2BE.
2BE calling. This is 2BE calling. This is the Belfast station of the British Broadcasting Company, broadcasting on 435 metres.
The government of the day decided that this newfangled radio thing was potentially too important to leave in commercial hands. So in 1927, the BBC became a public corporation, funded by a licence fee, and 2BE part of the regional service, and eventually the Home Service. After the Second World War, what had been the Forces programme was continued as the Light programme, with music and entertainment. And in the 50s, a station playing classical music with educational programmes became the Third, and that was its name. As the 1960s dawned and pop music and culture took off, there was, though, precious little of it on daytime radio. At night, those groovy pop fans could seek out Radio Luxembourg, with its programmes mostly sponsored by the record companies.
Green is go! Go with 2
wait.
Colourful Radio Luxembourg. Come join the OIS. Come join the OIS.
OIS?
The only independent station on the air.
I hear.
Colourful Radio Luxembourg.
But the entrepreneurs were working on how to bring popular radio to a music-starved audience, and they hit upon the idea of getting round the rules by broadcasting from international waters as pirates. At Easter 1964, the first Radio Caroline opened with the Rolling Stones and Not Fade Away, a dig at Radio Luxembourg's often variable signal.
I wanna tell you how it's gonna be.
There were two Caroline ships, one in the south of England and the other anchored off the Isle of Man, beaming into the neighbouring countries.
Oh, that's much better. Yes, Ireland swings, everyone. La 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 la. Oh, wasn't that a marvellous rickety? Brian Collin, the Flatterman Fair, a little something called Ireland Swings, and it sure does, by golly. It's 5 after 8 o'clock in the morning here. You're listening to the sounds of Go-Go Radio, Caroline Mark. And right now, we'd like to say a very good morning to Norma and Bean and Mrs. Greenhaw. Hello there, Mrs. Woman. How are you?
Another pirate appeared at Hogmanay 1965, Radio Scotland, which for a short time anchored off Ballywalter in County Down.
1 Newton order can be heard at 7. From 242, Richard Park reporting. Broadcasting all day and into the night time too on 242 meters. This is Radio Scotland and Ireland.
Yeah, there goes one on the Saturday Spin Show, going out specially for all the fellas of the 242 tether right there in Belfast. Come on home, because fellas, I wouldn't mind being one of those.
Saturday night people coming home from parties and things like that.
But 60s pirate radio was not to last. The Labour government of the day was determined to scuttle the ships by making it illegal for UK citizens to assist them.
Presenting Caroline Radio News.
Good morning, this is Dave Williams of the 10 o'clock news. Broadcasting. Mr. Paul Brand, the Conservative spokesman on broadcasting, said last night that the government had lost a great opportunity by banning commercial radio from Britain. He said that the BBC and commercial stations operating side by side would have given listeners a choice of variety and quality unequalled anywhere in the world. He said that it was perfectly feasible to set up local commercial stations which could have operated in the same manner as the pirates, with local features as well. But, he said, the Postmaster General had said that he objected to radio being the byproduct of the search for profits. In other words, the socialists totally rejected commercial radio, although the operations of the pirates in the past 3 years had shown that the people wanted it. Moscow. Mr. Kosygin...
The BBC were then given the green light to expand their 3 services, which took place on the 30th of September 1967, splitting the light programme into the new Radio 1, with Radio 2 remaining the light, the third becoming Radio 3, and the home service Radio 4. They could also open 8 experimental local stations in England.
And in fact, it brings us to the end of the title, The Home Service, because from tomorrow, as you've probably heard, BBC Sound programmes are divided into Radio 1, 2, 3 and 4. And what was called the Home Service until today now becomes Radio 4. And Radio 4, the Home Service for Northern Ireland, opens in the morning at the usual time, 6:35, with the programme Farming Today. And so from those of us left here in Broadcasting House, this is Walter Love wishing you all a very good night.
Radio 1 took its inspiration largely from the most professional sounding pirate, Radio London, right down to using the same jingles. But a demand had been proven for an alternative, and in 1970 the election of a Conservative government kick-started the process. The Independent Television Authority became the Independent Broadcasting Authority, with the task of introducing independent local radio, ILR, with 19 stations planned across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. They wanted this to be a public service and not purely commercial, fearing that the style of American radio at that time would be inappropriate.
The White House says telegrams to the president have run 4-1 in support of the administration's Vietnam policy. Defense Secretary Laird says several thousand Americans will remain in South Vietnam in training and advisory capacities after the end of the war. North Vietnamese delegates to the Paris peace talks have proposed that the United States engage in secret talks with the Viet Cong.
Plymouth makes it.
See your local New York, New Jersey, Fairfield County Plymouth dealer.
Cloudy and the chance of brief passing showers tonight, becoming windy, and temperatures dropping to the mid and upper 40s. Tomorrow, partly sunny, windy, and cool. The high around 60. Fair and cool tomorrow night and Saturday. Right now, under cloudy skies, 60 degrees. This is Russ Campbell, WWRL 2020 News.
London came first for ILR, and uniquely it was to get 2 stations. A news and talk service that would also provide national bulletins for the network, LBC, and a general entertainment service called Capital Radio. These launched in October 1973, and while the 3-day week of early 1974 didn't help, were generally regarded as underwhelming. However, at Hogmanay 1973, Glasgow welcomed Radio Clyde, and this proved an immediate success.
Radio Clyde 261, all together now. Sing it to me. Radio Clyde 261, all together now. Now you're talking, all together happy, all together fun, all together music, and the good times have just begun. Let me tell you now, Radio Clyde.
Relief all round that ILR could work, and by November 1974 the IBA advertised for a contractor to set up a Belfast station. It's worth noting that on New Year's Eve 1974 the BBC in Belfast launched Radio Ulster on medium wave with around 4 hours a day of local programmes.
This is BBC Radio Ulster on 224 metres medium wave.
Of the companies that applied to run an ILR station, Community Radio Services, backed by the Belfast Telegraph, won the franchise in February 1975, and they promised to be broadcasting on or before St Patrick's Day 1976. Against a backdrop of the Troubles, an out-of-Belfast location was found in Newtonards, a County Down town, which led to the choice of name for the station. 12 years earlier, Petula Clark had an international hit with the Tony Hatch song Downtown, which inspired the request, accepted by Tony, to adapt it for the station's jingles. The first managing director of Downtown was David Hannon, an Ulsterman who had been manager of the BBC's first local station in Leicester. Another BBC man, well known on television screens, was Don Anderson.
Well, at the time Downtown was being put together, I was a BBC television reporter. And I was, in fact, just back from Vietnam. And I saw there was an advertisement for, in this case, the program controller of Downtown. It was an exciting time to be at the forefront of something new at broadcasting, because Downtown was one of initial wave of commercial stations being established in the United Kingdom. And so there was an air of excitement about all of broadcasting. UTV had just begun in 1959, so it wasn't established all that long ago. And Downtown was being built from the ground up with new technology. And new technology was people operating the studio by themselves. Most of the people broadcasting had no broadcasting experience at all. Now, this was a deliberate choice of mine because I didn't want anything sounding like the BBC.
So, with a name, presenters, journalists, a sales and promotions team, and beavering away early, the engineers, all were getting ready for a launch on March the 16th, 1976, with the IBA warming up their transmitters.
This is an engineering test transmission being made by the Independent Broadcasting Authority. We are transmitting on 1025 kilohertz, that's 293 meters in the medium wave band, and also in stereo on 96 megahertz in the VHF band. These tests are in preparation for the start of independent local radio for the Belfast area, with the programs of Downtown Radio. This is the Engineering Information Service of the Independent Broadcasting Authority. The IBA is responsible for independent television and independent local radio, for it both owns and operates the transmitters, appoints the program companies, sets the program standards, controls the advertising, and establishes the technical standards. This is the Engineering Information Service of the Independent Broadcasting Authority.
While the tests were going out, the broadcasters were training and practicing in readiness for going live. On the big day, just before 6 a.m, in the studio were David Hannon to say the opening words and John Paul, presenter of the first programme.
Good morning. It's just after 1 minute to 6 on Tuesday, the 16th of March, 1976. And welcome to those of you listening on 293 metres in the medium wave or 96 megahertz in the VHF band. In a few moments, the independent local radio programmes of Downtown Radio will be coming on the air. The programmes will begin with a news bulletin read by Michael Beattie at 6 o'clock, and that will be followed by Morning Town, presented by John Paul.
Wherever you go, the sound on your radio should always be downtown. So much more music and the friendliest people here on 293 Downtown.
6 o'clock on Downtown Radio, and over to the Downtown Radio News Desk.
Good morning. It's Tuesday the 16th of March. Downtown Radio News at 6 o'clock. Michael Beattie reporting. The first independent local radio station in Northern Ireland went on the air a few moments ago. Downtown Radio will broadcast from its studios in Newtownards and hopes to provide a service for most of the province. Here's our Managing Director, David Hannon.
We want to entertain as many people as possible, as much of the time as possible. At the same time, we hope that this new station of ours will be able to bring something new into people's lives. Of course, this means we must make a financial success of the undertaking because we have to stand on our own 2 feet.
A reserve policeman's been shot in the neck during a terrorist ambush in County Fermanagh. And in County Tyrone, soldiers narrowly escaped injury when a landmine exploded. Wendy Austin reports.
The Fermanagh shooting happened shortly before midnight.
Majority decision over Joseph McZuga. That's all for now. Next news at 6:20.
Wherever you go, the sound on your radio should always be downtown. So much more music and the friendliest people here on 293 Downtown.
Nine and a half minutes after 6 o'clock.
Wherever you go, the sound on your radio should always be downtown. Rock and breezy, up and about, swinging along with John's Paul. Rock and breezy, up and about, swinging along with John's Paul.
And a very good morning to you. Welcome along to the brand new sounds of Downtown Radio. Broadcasting on 293 meters in the medium wave band and 96 megahertz in the VHF band in stereo. Monday to Friday, each morning from 6 o'clock to right through to 9:15. This is John Paul with you. Sorry, my tongue's slightly tied up this morning. The excitement's killing me, you know.
John Paul's Morning Town.
And the first record up in the very first John Paul program from Downtown Radio comes from, of course, Randy Edelman and a song called Concrete and Clay, 6:11. Yes, indeed, opening up the program this morning, Randy Edelman on a song called The Concrete and Clay. And as you know, this is a commercial radio station for Northern Ireland, and of course we have to play commercials.
Even Downtown Radio couldn't start the day without them. They certainly are first.
What are you talking about?
Sausages.
Oh, sausages? Our Billy wouldn't eat anything else.
Toad in the hole? Then that might be very, very nice. They're no ordinary bangers. I like that. Yes, more and more people are enjoying that rich, succulent pork, subtly blended with herbs.
What you mean is everyone's getting on the scent of the Cookstown sizzle.
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. A girl could become addicted.
For all you need and more, Superman. John Paul 293.
Happy Radio.
Exactly 15 minutes past 6 o'clock here on Downtown Radio, 293 in the medium wave band. If you've just joined us, a very good morning to you. You're with the Morning Town program. My name is John Paul, and this is Marmalade.
Until you came
While John Paul was far from falling apart at the seams, he was grateful for the use of the wastepaper bin when he threw up into it. Hendy, Michael Henderson, was next on air, and he recalls those nail-biting moments and a totally unforeseen news flash that occurred during his first show.
It made you even more nervous. I mean, I watched the poor man. He was just, I think it was the champagne with the fry might have caused the upset, perhaps, and the nerves, of course, as well. But I was watching all this, and I was saying, "You all right?" You know, and he said, "Oh, I'm okay." So, I mean, that made me kind of very nervous, and I went in and sat down and was thinking, well, what happens when my tummy was going a bit mad as well. But, I mean, it was a nervous day, but we got through it. I've got to say, it's a fond memory. Whenever they came rushing in, David Sloan came and said, "Prime Minister's resigned." I said, "Come on, Davy, give us a break, you know." He says, "No, seriously, Andy, seriously." And, you know, he was waving the printout from the teleprinter. I said, "Oh, right. So we'll interrupt the programme at the moment. There's a special announcement to be made." Except, boom, off he went.
That news story of Harold Wilson's resignation was manna from heaven, as news editor David Sloan recalls.
Can't remember the exact time, but it was after 10 o'clock. I remember the teleprinters, we had the two teleprinters in those times, with the Independent Radio News and the Press Association. And I can't remember which one alarmed first, but one of them did. And a line came up and said, "The Prime Minister has resigned." And at that stage, I thought for a second somebody was playing a practical joke. But within seconds, the teleprinter went off. So I remember tearing it off and shouting in the newsroom that Harold Wilson had resigned. And I took it down to the studio where Hendy was on, and it was my first chance to do some live broadcasting on Downtown that morning. And Hendy pulled out of whatever he was doing at the time, and I announced that Harold Wilson had resigned. And it's a moment that sort of goes down in history. And I think we discovered that we were the first broadcasters to announce Harold Wilson's resignation anywhere. And in fact, the BBC in Northern Ireland in those days didn't know about it. And Billy Flax, who was the political correspondent, was walking down the stairs in Broadcasting House, and there was a cleaning lady on the stairs, and she said, "Harold Wilson has resigned, the Prime Minister has resigned." And he said, nonsense. If she had resigned, I would have been on the air with it and I would know. She said, no, that news station came on the air this morning. She was listening to Downtown on the stairs of the BBC. So that went down in history as well.
We'll hear more from David a little later. Like the champagne, the music was flowing, with this song being that week's number one. Even mentioning Downtown, Tina Charles with "I Love to Love." Standing by to do their shows in the afternoon were Trevor Campbell, Big T and Candy Devine.
Wherever you go, the sound on your radio should always be Downtown.
When that jingle was playing, I thought that this is the moment where we could both start crying.
Indeed, it does. It fills me up a bit. It does, really, because I think it was because there was so much emotion in all of us that day.
Do you remember?
At the birth of a radio station. I think to explain to people why it was so emotional, we were the first of our kind. We were the first music radio station, a commercial radio station in this part of the world. We were the 19th in the UK, and this was a new concept of music virtually all day long. Music and chat. Meaningful speech, they called it. That was until they heard John Paul and myself, and then they called it chat, I think.
Do you remember Don Anderson put up those huge posters for us, for each of us? Mine said, "Candy is dandy."
That's right.
And it was so warming and welcoming. You looked up and there was this handwritten poster on the window.
That's right, on the window. Yeah, that's right. But we were here before the station went on air. The building was just being built. We thought it would never be ready on time. And just for a whole new radio station, a whole new concept, which indeed nobody was 100% sure would work financially. because we were looking for advertising. We had to explain what we were. Now it's we're from downtown, do you want to advertise on us? But in those days, the advertisers had to explain what was coming their way and get the advertising in advance. But anyway, that was why it was such an exciting time that very first day. I was on this slot, actually, from 12 o'clock until 2.
The dinner spinner.
The dinner spinner, and you were on in the afternoon drive.
Right, after Brian McShann.
Yeah, was it
who could have talked for England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales.
Yeah.
Racing from Sandown, where, and listen to this, would you believe the weather is unsettled? And look at it here, isn't it fantastic?
Yeah.
And so could both of us.
Well,
well, Candy, I haven't seen so much of you in the last 5 years. We have always been ships passing in the night.
I know.
Because sometimes I was seeing you, every night you were coming on after me, sometimes in the country, and sometimes I was coming on after you when you were drive, and then sometimes we were separated. We only saw each other at programme meetings.
Just a wee love letter every now and then.
Just a wee exchange now and again, and a wee kiss, and then you always, more recently when I was on the Saturday breakfast show a few years ago, you always left me a note from your late night, and I always told the listeners about it. I said, if ever there's something welcoming coming in to an absolutely empty radio station with only yourself and the security man, you come into the studio and there's a note, have a good one, T, can, and a kiss. And it's amazing what a little note can mean under those circumstances.
I've become more artistic since then. I used to leave you a moon face.
Well, Candy, everybody knows you came here from Australia, and we're not really doing a This Is Your Life, but we do have to just a little bit of, did you start off what made you leave your Australia?
Wanted to see the world.
Really? It was as simple as that?
Yeah, and I came here to work in cabaret, and Donald, who became my husband, actually booked me, he and Jimmy Johnson booked me into the cabaret at the Talk of the Town. And the rest, as they say, is history. I fell in love, and then we got married in Dublin, lived there for 5 years, where I was doing television and cabaret and theatre, and got a phone call out of the blue from here. And someone at RT said to me, there's a radio station in Northern Ireland, and they're looking for you. And it was Downtown Radio, and I had never heard of it. So anyway, Don Anderson phoned me, and it was through Cathal McCabe, because I knew Cathal, and he was head of programmes?
He was deputy programme controller.
That's right.
I always thought he was head of music until the other day.
Yes. So anyway, it was through him that they contacted me, and they said, would you be interested in coming up every Sunday to do a programme? And I said, yeah, I would be interested, but the travelling wouldn't be necessary because I'm back here living. So they said, oh, are you? Forget that, come and see us. And then I started on drive time, and then I saw you guys. I thought, I can't do this job.
Don Anderson asked me, T, can you teach Candy how to operate the desk in a week? I said, I'm quite sure I can. Whenever I met you, I knew it was going to take no time at all, because it's not nearly as daunting as it looks. It looks like as if you're flying an aeroplane, but it's not really. But that first day, that was your first song, Tina Charles, I Love to Love. And it was, I don't know why, I know we have special place in our hearts for the music of 1976, but it was a good year for music. It was a good year for sunshine, because we had ahead of us an excellent summer, actually.
How do you remember that?
Coming,
How do you remember that?
My mother used to say things that I would say when I was 3. Say, you couldn't remember that. Well, I said, Mummy, if it's right, I couldn't have made it up. You would say, how do you remember that?
I can't even remember what last summer was like, let alone
76,
remembering the
76
summer of
was
76.
a brilliant summer.
Yeah. But it was everything. Everything was good about the year.
Yeah.
I mean, the job was new. We were all...
And we were never away from each other.
No, we weren't. We were so passionate about...
I was saying this
I don't mean about each other, but I mean about the job.
Well, there was passion as well.
Yes, there was a bit of that as well.
I mean, people say nowadays, oh, it's like a family when they're talking about a film they worked on or a television series. And really, I can understand that, because we were like a family. We all went to see you in South Pacific. And what was the one you had a broken leg or your foot was
Jesus
in plaster?
Christ Superstar.
Yeah, we went to see you in that as well. And I mean, it was a team. It was a team outing,
Yes.
And it was such a feeling. And we all went, people came along to my discos, a whole lot of people out of sales and people.
I can remember you guys used to go out for a drink, and I used to think, well, I can't go with them because I had to go home and cook the dinner. Someone had to be responsible.
Yes, well, that's why you were always the
Anti-can.
the more anti-can figure who did control some of us.
Yes. Following Candy on that opening day, Eddie West made his first appearance on Intro, the slot where, for 1 week, new voices could try to impress.
The sound of the Doobie Brothers and Take Me in Your Arms and Rock Me. Well, unfortunately, that brings me to the end of this, the first intro show. So from me, Eddie West, it's good night, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you all tomorrow night, 6:35.
7 o'clock Downtown Radio News time. Over to the Downtown Radio News desk.
Wendy Austin reporting. The Irishman held in police custody after yesterday's London...
Big T returned for Downtown Country.
Dear Trevor, a million thanks for Downtown Radio. At last we have a replacement for some other radio station that used to be slightly more watery than this one, and it goes on to say all sorts of nice things which would embarrass me too much to read out over the air, and it comes with most sincere thanks from Liz Woodside.
And then seasoned radio and television presenter Bill Smith arrived to host Downtown Downbeat and bring the station's opening day to a close.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to the late night sound of Downtown Downbeat. Music through to the wee small hour of 1 o'clock. Music from Tony Bennett, Ella Fitzgerald and Nat Cole, to name but a few. Orchestras like Ray Conniff, Bert Camford and James Last. A nostalgic look back to the big band era, a featured LP of the week, news every hour on the hour, traffic information, and lots more besides. And by the way, many thanks for the good wishes, the letters, the cards, the telegrams. First show, first record, and the honour falls to Sid Lawrence with the big band sound of Glenn Miller's classic, In the Mood.
Other presenters with a number of shows each week were Paul Prenter.
And hello there, it's Paul Prenter on Yesteryear and welcoming you to the sounds of 1966.
Radio 293. Downtown. That's where your friends will be. Downtown. Wonderful radio. Downtown. Paul Prenter.
Yes, indeed, that's me. And do you remember this one?
Oh, no!
Oh, well.
And Derek Marsden, who in his show business career had worked with stars such as Shirley Bassey, Jim Dale and Bob Hope.
I was appearing on BBC's Taste of Honey, along with Gloria Honeyford, which I did quite frequently. And we went up to the canteen afterwards, and Gloria was talking to me over a cup of coffee and said, did you ever think of approaching the new commercial radio station? And I said, I've never heard of the new commercial radio station, which I hadn't. So she told me who the MD was, and it just turned out that he used to be my producer with BBC on television series and radio. Phoned him up, said, sure, we'd love to have you aboard. Would you like to meet Don Anderson? I said I would. Came down to this place, which was still being finished at that stage. You had to climb over boards and concrete and whatnot. Had an interview, and they told me what they expected me to do, and they told me what the wages were, and I went, But I started, and of course I'm still here 20 years later and enjoying every minute of it, you know.
While the names we've just recalled presented music-based shows with lively chats and interviews in the studio or over the phone, there were full speech programmes too, produced by members of the news team. Wendy Austin with the arts, Maggie Taggart covering entertainment, Dick Phillips bookshelf, David Sloan on local government, and Eamon Malley with farming. Don Anderson presented an hour-long phone-in on a selected topic twice a week, and Brian McSharry also led the sports output with a marathon 5-hour programme each Saturday afternoon. And Sidney Cahoon and his tape recorder captured what was happening on the amateur drama scene. Back to music, and there were the specialist programmes as appointments to listen for fans of genres such as classical, country, both American and Irish, traditional, folk, jazz, progressive rock, soul, concert bands and movie soundtracks. The local music business was given a boost by artists getting airtime that had been scarce previously.
Well, I was just 18 and he looked like Steve McQueen, and I was pretty green and ripe for love. Well, he took me out.
I got a lot of plays on downtown. Everybody used to think that I had a share in downtown.
And love was once around the floor, have another drink or two. Just before we left the local bar, and love was once around the backseat of
Such was the impact of the station that the national record companies also paid attention and sent their pluggers over to coax presenters into listening to their latest singles and albums. Some also provided special jingles based on new releases. So when the Phil Coulter and Bill Martin protege Ginger sang Just Like You, for Downtown, it sounded just like this.
It's downtown on 293. Tune in to downtown, downtown's the one for me. On 293.
Downtown, with a large and growing audience, was able to create hits, selling enough to make the countdown. One song, well remembered from the time, was The Little Girl in Me by Judy Cheeks, which only charted in Northern Ireland and South Africa. We heard earlier from David Sloan, head of news in the early years, about the Harold Wilson news flash.
The morning times we were doing news every 20 minutes, which no one had ever heard of before. And but when that announcement went out and people realised that we could interrupt programmes of news flashes, as we called them in those days, and announce things like that, people decided, that's the station to listen to. And certainly when the Troubles were on, and we were at the height of the Troubles in those days, we were able to bring stories immediately to people. And in fact, you think about it, we were able to alert people to bombs that were planted and things like that in clear areas before anyone knew about them. And the police used us a lot in those days to clear areas and to announce that there was a device found somewhere, a suspicious device. So it was something that really was probably needed in those days, and Downtown very quickly gained a reputation, which hopefully is never lost. But people did very quickly realise that we were always first with the news. Mm-hmm. And we were using two-way radio system in our cars in those days, which nobody else did as well. And we were able to divert reporters to scenes of what was happening, and sometimes we were there before the army were there. But it was down to the public, and the public realised we were first with the news. The public phoned us immediately to tell us something had happened.
Another arrival in the first year was the Downtown downbeat guy himself, John O'Hara.
It was difficult at the beginning. I think we realised that there was mass interest because it was the first, and then whenever I went on air and I started my phone in, that proved to me that there were thousands out there listening. It was great. It was very successful.
As 1976 gave way to 77, Pat Brady, the entertainment alter ego of Paddy O'Flaherty, left Downtown, and Tommy Sands stepped forward to host Country Killie.
Well, hello, welcome once again to Country Killie. My name is Tommy Sands, and I hope you have the time, taste and temperament to stay with me for the next while away, a while of an evening with the best of folk, tradition, music, song, crack and diversion. Starting off with Arcady.
Well, I must say I was fascinated by radio as a child growing up because it was the only thing that was there. We had a battery, wet battery, wireless, had to be recharged. So the world came in through the radio. Of course, with the music, I travelled a lot, and it was very important. But I remember being in Vienna, and we were playing there, and reading in some newspaper, there's a new radio station starting in County Down called Downtown Radio, and that was very interesting for us. I think one of the things that I liked about it was because I was interested in getting out and about around the countryside, because there's so many great musicians and fiddle players that would never have been heard outside their own town land. That part I enjoyed very much, and it was very important, I think, for people to be on the programme. So I think it sort of went from there, and I must say I enjoyed it immensely. Learned an awful lot, met an awful lot of people, and learned how important radio is and how important it is to move between people and amongst people. So I could go away and people I would meet. I met Boris Spassky in East Berlin, chess man. And I met a man who walked on the moon somewhere else. A man called James Irwin. He was a lovely man, and his mother was a good old singer, but she wasn't such a great singer, but she sang anyway. So with a radio microphone, I found I could talk to anybody. And I remember I went back and forward to the States a lot, and everywhere, Moscow, everywhere.
And on Sunday evenings, local singer John Greer was here to keep it country.
Well, all remains for me to say, thanks for listening. Hope you've enjoyed the whole programme. I'll be back with you at the usual time of 7 o'clock. Till then, from me, John Greer, as usual, do keep well, keep safe, and above all, keep it strictly country. Bye-bye.
Outside broadcasts were a regular and important part of downtown's activities. And at Christmas, what better than the Big Tree Show?
Good morning, everyone. Welcome along to the Big Tree Show. The hits, the happiness, and the good music this morning, coming to you live from the City Hall in Belfast on a very mild Christmas Eve. And a very good morning there to Robinson Cleaver's Christmas tree. You're looking good. Yes, indeed. Lawrence, John, and myself doing it right through until 2. And it's all just for you. Scott Fitzgerald, Yvonne Keeley, and If I Had Words. It's a goodie, it's a nice one. It's the Hitbind Happy Happener on 293.
This is the Big Tree Show. I'll have a blue Christmas.
Good morning, welcome along if you've just joined us. It's the Tea Show. No, it's not, it's the Tree Show, I do beg your pardon. Right now on the Big T Show,
it's LJ the DJ.
The man with the request in his hand.
Yes, indeed, Trevor. The first one here reads, please play a request from my grandchildren, Nicola and John McGrath, also Jenny and Mark Thompson, and wish them a very Merry Christmas. And that's from Grandma White.
By 1978, downtown had settled well, but there was no way it was resting on its laurels. Don Anderson had returned to the BBC to revitalise Radio Ulster, and a newly arrived programme controller, Colin Leckie-Thompson, set about recruiting new presenters for a comprehensive revamp of the schedule in the autumn of that year. One of the new girls was Linda Jane, who was known from her work on Ulster Television.
The very first weekend I worked at downtown, my programme controller came to me and said, I want you to go to Dublin on Saturday. And I said, but I have plans for the weekend. And he said, tough, you're going to Dublin. So as I was the new girl, I thought I better. So why do you want me to go to Dublin? He said, you have a 3 o'clock appointment with Lauren Bacall. And I nearly passed out because I think that is big stardom. I'd always admired her as an actress, and I had very much admired her husband, Humphrey Bogart. So off I trundled to Dublin for my 3 o'clock appointment with Lauren Bacall, went to the suite in her hotel. She only gave 3 interviews in Ireland, and I was the only one from Northern Ireland. So I was taken into the suite with my trusty tape recorder beside me, terrified, sat down on a beautiful big settee and started to ask her the questions, and she was magic. We had a wonderful, wonderful interview, and I said thank you very much at the end and looked down to turn off my tape recorder. And yes, you've guessed it, I hadn't turned it on. So being a real big, brave radio presenter, I burst into tears. I said, my dear, what's wrong? And I said, I didn't turn on my tape recorder. And do you know what she said? Don't worry about it, my dear. We'll have a small gin and tonic and we'll do it all over again. And we did.
I've raised 3 children, a lot by myself. I've made many decisions.
Did you decide to write this book on your own, or did someone approach you? Was it something you wanted to do?
Well, actually, it was something that I didn't think I would ever do. But I was asked to do it at a time in my life that I really was kind of at loose ends.
I was with her for over an hour, and I'll always treasure that memory. Sad things happen sometimes, happy things happen. On the happy front, I have been very lucky to travel as a result of the radio, and I've broadcast from other parts of the world. some of them very happy, as in broadcasting from Disney in California and in Paris. Some a little more traumatic in going to the likes of Africa with Concern Worldwide. But it's such a wide spectrum. It really gives you lots of experience. Funny things happen at the radio station. In the early days, I lived in Belfast at that time and was never very good at getting up early in the morning. And on one occasion, or maybe two, I was a little late for my broadcast. But I knew I had a stalwart here who would stand in for me. And she indeed was Pamela Ballantyne. And Pamela did my programme for 45 minutes till I arrived. My father didn't know that it wasn't me. Most importantly, neither did my boss.
Other new presenters included Bill Naylor as co-host of The Breakfast Show with Linda McCauley, Ivan Martin, Paul Atchison to present WIRP, the weaker electric radio programme in case you didn't know, Davy Sims, Gary Bones and Paul McKenna. A distinctive programme and presenter hit the air. In The Ramblin' Man, Bobby Hanvey met an array of amazing characters.
Boy, there's another thing about it. When I was taping all these guys, I met the greatest characters that Northern Ireland had to offer. They were witty, they were quick, they were as quick as Don Rickles. Some of them were as quick as him, and he is quick. I met all these people, and they were so bright, and I'd think about them for weeks after, to know how good they were. But then that had a bad effect on me as well, because in talking to ordinary people during the day, I was disappointed in them. I didn't want to talk to them. It's put me off talking to people. They weren't as exciting as the ones that I had taped. So that's one thing I found out.
Another familiar voice from Ulster Television was Margaret Cunningham. She joined the Downtown team to produce and present a holiday programme called Take a Break.
They gotta have 'em in Tyson, 'cause everyone's a millionaire.
Okay, well, we start out, you get your biscuit. These are homemade biscuits, flour biscuits. Then we have the bacon and German sausage from Fredericksburg. And then we have the eggs here we cook in our skillet, scrambled eggs, hash brown potatoes. We have grits. Then we have what we call cowboy gravy. That goes on your biscuits.
This is really the way to have breakfast in America. It could be a scene straight out of a cowboy film. The horses have been tied up in a clearing, the sky overhead is bright blue and there's not a cloud in sight, and the temperature is probably in the high 70s, although it's only 8 o'clock in the morning. We're enjoying a typical cowboy breakfast, the kind of thing any cowboy would have tucked into in the 1800s. Well, this is the 20th century, and we're staying at the Mayan Dude Ranch in Bandera in the hill country. In the background, as you can hear, Lou, an old cowhand who can tell many a fascinating story, is entertaining us with a country and western song. With me is Bobby Boyd, who is the foreman at the ranch. Bobby, just what is a dude ranch?
Well, at a dude ranch, you have your basic resort with your swimming, tennis, and things of this sort. But you had the added attractions of horseback riding. We have cowboy breakfast out here on the trail. We have stagecoach rides and things to the cowboy effect. We also have our activities at night are varied, like Italian night, Irish night, other things of this sort.
Back home, the news continued to be a litany of violent events. David Sloan again.
Everything was different. You know, if you look at Le Mans, how do you cover Le Mans? It was a dreadful atrocity. And you cover that one way. Then you had Lord Mountbatten down at Sligo. Again, equally atrocious, but again, you had to cover it a slightly different way. That afternoon, Narrowwater, 18 soldiers. Everything just happened. And I think nowadays, broadcasters seem to spend their time analysing the stories. We just covered the stories. You reported on what had happened. And you didn't analyse what had happened. You left that up to another day. That was one of the dangers, moving things on too fast. Because we news every half hour, we were getting bored with it. But a lot of listeners were only switching on and getting it for the first time. So you did have to be careful of that. And that's where good duty editors were a godsend. They knew when to move the story on. And even if you had a new angle to it, you still had to inform people what had happened. But the other priority was check, make sure you got your facts right. We did make mistakes. Not many, I have to say, over the years, one or two here and there, but you always check the facts and make sure that the story's right and you could stand it up later on. Because sometimes enthusiasm, you run away with yourself and you write the story and you forget to check. But we always said, check the facts, make sure 100% it's right. Any questions? If you any doubt about it, don't put it on air. If in doubt, leave out the old story.
By the end of the 70s, Downtown was the top station in the whole of ILR, with 71% of adults tuning in each week. And its share was at a record level of 48.1%, virtually half of all radio listening, translating into just under 11 million hours in its Greater Belfast coverage area. A very strong way to begin the 80s, which we'll do in part 2 of this special programme for Downtown's 50th anniversary. I'm John Rosborough.
On air, on your smart speaker, and now on radio. Celebrating 50 years. This is Downtown Radio.
The top stories this hour. Donald Trump has resumed his war of words with the Prime Minister. The President says he's not happy Sir Keir Starmer didn't immediately join the US-Israeli offensive against Iran. He seemed to suggest that he'd requested 2 aircraft carriers from the UK at the outbreak of the conflict, but that was rejected. Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey says the PM's right not to cave.
I think we should have stood up to Trump before. The Democrats have led the UK opposition to Donald Trump and the way he's undermined our economy through his trade tariffs and now this illegal war on Iran.
Meanwhile, there's been criticism by politicians in Northern Ireland about a financial package of support for those struggling to afford home heating oil. The government's offering £53 million in help. 17 million of that will go to Northern Ireland. 3 schools have confirmed cases of meningitis after 2 young people died following an outbreak in Kent. One of those was a 6th form pupil, described by her head teacher as incredibly kind and intelligent. University students in Canterbury are lining up, many in masks, to get antibiotics to help limit the spread of the infection.
One of my mates lives in one of the affected buildings, so I figured it was better safe than sorry to come get checked out.
Didn't help with exam stress because it's exam week for me. It's just a bit annoying.
It's just not worth the risk not coming, especially because everyone's been attending lectures and seminars. We don't know who's been in contact with who.
A teenager's been arrested after a gun was brought into a school in Wolverhampton. West Midlands Police says it was alerted to reports in Bilston this morning. Chelsea have been fined nearly £11 million and given a suspended transfer ban. It's related to historical breaches of financial rules under the club's previous owners. And hummus and alcohol-free beer are among the new items being used to work out UK inflation. Apparently, the changes reflect our modern, healthier lifestyles. From Sky News, I'm Faye De Silva.
Radio station here on Downtown 293. In the countryside, Belfast or by the sea. Whatever age you are, we'll keep you company. We're here all day through. It's your radio station, it's Downtown 293. We are up the stations, Downtown Radio.
Welcome to part 2 of the special documentary Downtown Radio 50 Years On. I'm John Rosborough. After those formative early years when the station became established and consistently successful, we're now in the 80s and the days when ILR stations could make their special programmes available to others in the network. One of these was Shamrock 80, produced by Davy Sims, about the punk scene in Belfast at that time. And here, Davy talks about starting at the station.
But the first time I went into Downtown to talk about this new programme, it was for a training session, and John Rosborough showed me, and this is down to John, he showed me the charts, the Downtown chart, the top 40, and he pointed out all the tunes that weren't being played during the day, or really any time, and there was people like Generation X. It was one that actually stands out in my memory, but it was the post-punk, the punk and the post-punk bands. So he told me that that's the sort of music they wanted to play, and I was delighted because at that time I was listening to The Jam and Elvis Costello. Elvis Costello was the bridge from Simon and Garfunkel and Cat Stevens that I had been listening to. I started on, it was called Time Out. We had Stephen Nelson Rastus in the as the sound engineer. I suggested to John we bring in some local bands. We couldn't pay them. but we could give them a good demo and they could take the demo and so some classics. Rudy was a classic, which led them to their Radio 1 sessions. You were trusted, you were brought in because you knew music, you knew what people liked. You could push the barriers just a little bit. It made for entertaining, interesting radio and good communication with the audience. I remember my first Christmas there, a listener sent me presents. I'd been there for, a couple of months.
Davy went on to produce and present a youth magazine show.
2-hour programme, 4 nights a week. I thought, this is great. So the freedom to play the music that I wanted. Interviews, Hedley McGuinness talking about motorbikes, legal people, doctors, sort of all the information young people or people in general need with this music and sessions. So it was called Nothing Better. The headline was Nothing Better is not better than everything, but everything is not better than nothing better. And it ran for about 4 or 5 years.
There were the Music Star specials too. Head of presentation Cherry McElwain talked to Elton John.
Just to get back to the album once again, Never Gonna Fall was of course released as a single, and the other song, co-written by Tom Robinson and yourself, Sartorial Eloquence. It's a very interesting title. Was there any interesting circumstance prompted it? It's a smashing song and very much like the old Elton John. I can use the word old.
It's one of Tom's lyrics to me that I've used have been excellent. In fact, there's one on the next album which is the best one of the whole lot as far as songs go. But no, you'd have to ask him about the title. I mean, it's the song that's been tipped to the next single in America and everything like that. I mean, I can't put it on there. It is a great lyric and a great title, and but to get the true meaning, I have a feeling it's a true life experience from Mr. Robinson himself, because most of his lyrics are.
Where did the title for the album come from?
Oh, well, choosing album titles, unless they come to you straight away, is an absolute pain in the neck. And I just thought, well, it's my 21st album, if you count double albums and Greatest Hits 1 and 2. And 33 years of age, so that was, I thought, well, if I put it out and it's 21 at 33, people might think it's 33 RPM. But no, that's the only title I could come up with. There were others, but it's, that's the only one that clicked.
A young presenter from Larne joined the lineup. Yes, that's you, Ronan Kelly.
It's a broad-recht moonlight next to next, and you're all recht if you're heading home with Ronan Kelly.
That wasn't a big one, by the way. He's in another part of the building doing bigger and better things. Just for you, coast to coast.
You got a money for a millionaire. You won't be long before you don't care.
Generally, as a station, the people that you worked with, we had such a mixture of people coming from so many different disciplines prior to their engagement. Jackie Flavelle and the Chris Barber Band, Candy Devine on Skippy, the Bush Kangaroo, which I watched as a child, and also all the stage stuff that Candy did in the entertainment. Linda Jane from television, Big T, a civil servant come DJ, John Paul, I think Gibbon, maybe I'm right in saying he was in the Navy, Derek Marsden, and I was very, very fond of Derek. Derek was not only very encouraging, but he was just a lovely human being. I always think, when I think of Linda Jane, I always think of Linda and Candy, and together we would have worked on road shows. And the two girls, they were so generous to work with. There was none of this grabbing the mic. They weren't precious. They worked as a team. And I must say that I'll always remember. And I'm a great believer in the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And when you get that synergy of people coming together, and the output was superb. But nowadays people tend to work in silos, and it shows.
In 1981, a brand new breakfast show was launched, First Edition, with Ivan Martin, who previously had been doing music programmes, and Richard Young, who was working in the features department.
Brighten your mornings with Ivan and Richard.
We had the trio, of course.
Yes, we did. The three brothers, Ivan, Martin, and Richard Young. Yeah, the young boys, And then there was, at Christmas, the lady who sent 3 presents.
That's right.
One for Ivan, one for Richard, and one for Martin Young. Yes. So, but people were very good and kind and generous, to be honest.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, funny, I'm out of it now, so maybe that's why I think this way, that broadcasting was more personal in Northern Ireland then. Mm-hmm. And I suspect it is now, because everything's gone shiny and modern and commercial and
samey,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then we had things like a helicopter containing May McFetridge telling you what the traffic was like. That was...
Yes.
It may not have been decided as a bit of genius, but it certainly worked out that way.
It did. Then we had May on one morning, and then she became a fixture.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was Toby, the eye in the sky.
The voice of doom from above.
Yes. The Scampi belt. Toby invented the Scampi belt, which was sort of from about Helen's Bay up to Marino.
Yeah. And there were a few characters who sort of appeared as figures of speech.
Yeah.
In the weather forecast, there was this person, Mr. Foggy Patches.
Yes, that's right.
The seasonal norm was the Australian Father Christmas.
That's right, yeah.
But there was just things that dropped out of existing sentences and took on a life of their own.
Well, somebody stopped me in the street in Ballycastle recently and said to me, "Where do you see this?" And I thought, what on earth? Well, we got a very precise flasher. And unbuttoned her coat and flung it wide, and there she was wearing a T-shirt emblazoned with something I had completely forgotten about, which said, "I was a dirty old stopover with Ivan and Richard."
I remember dirty old stopovers too, yes.
Yes.
Speaking of exotic places, Ivan and Richard even had a local hit record at the time of the World Cup in Spain in 1982.
It was a moonlight night in a bar in Old Mexico. Me and the boys had went over for a few beers and the World Cup, and suddenly the chatting up of a few birds and a quiet game of poker was interrupted when this big lad in a poncho calls me over to the phone.
"Senor, quickly, it's for you. Hello, you better come home, Sammy Kirkpatrick. Why have you started the room? Gallivanting off to football. I wish it had have been for spoon. My poor old head is lifting off me, and the kids have got the flu. The tick man's trying to break the door down, and they've disallowed your brew. Sammy Kirkpatrick, why don't you come home? Out there supporting Northern Ireland, while I have to stay here all my own.
Sorry, Audrey, would you speak up? I'm having wild bar hearing you with all these Mexicans chatting.
Uncle Jack has lost his Marleys. This time he's really gone too far. High heel boots and gold medallions, and hanging round a disco bar. He's even bought a ghetto blaster. He is completely out of hand, while you were lying in the sunshine, or full of drink up in the stand. Sammy Kirkpatrick, why don't you come home?
June Nightingale had been the early presenter at this time, and when she moved to England, a young Frank Mitchell was waiting in the wings.
I remember when I was about 16, I listened to Downtown, and I really was impressed by it. And Tommy Sands, the folk singer, did the Country Ceilidh show, and his auntie lived next door to me. And he came to visit his auntie. I was telling him how much I listened to Downtown. He said, "Why did you come down and see it?" And he was recording a program. I went down to see it, and I knew from the moment I went through the door that that is where I wanted to work. Now, like, of course, since that visit, I went on to work in pirate radio, and I got a job then in the BBC as a producer. But the point was, I really wanted to be on Downtown. I eventually got that opportunity So I did 5 o'clock to 7, thoroughly enjoyed it, and then had the opportunity to do weekend shows as well. I did the mid-morning show on the weekend on a Saturday. But I remember going in and being on when probably, at 5 o'clock in the morning, you had to switch the station on. There was probably no one listening at that point. But by the time you were on at 6:45, 10 to 7, going up to the breakfast show at 7 o'clock, significant numbers were listening, because the breakfast show was the creme de la creme of radio. And, I was the warm-up act for that. So that was very, very important and part of my development. There was so much freedom compared to the way radio is. It's very constrained in this day and age. But you had a real sense of being able to choose a flow of music that absolutely worked. And, there were people better skilled than me, needless to say, who were further up the pecking order on the radio, thanks to the Big T's and John Paul and people like that, who really could make the radio talk. And that was what drew me to downtown radio. Just the sound of it in the late 70s going into the 80s was absolutely amazing. And it was hugely, hugely successful, but there was such a demand for it. I remember being at teacher training college in Belfast during the hunger strikes, and the newsroom in downtown was so highly thought of that you didn't go to the BBC to find out what was happening. And if you can imagine, you're living in Andersonstown, you're going to college in Andersonstown, and the first person on hunger strike is about to die, and they are waiting for the news. The tannoy system in the university was on all day. Now, it was on at a lower level because life had to continue in the university. Whenever it got to news time, it was turned up from a central hub in the reception area, and everything stopped to hear downtown radio report on that issue around the hunger strikes day after day after day until Bobby Sands died. People like Eamon Malley, they were absolute authority in what was happening. And then an amazing team of journalists went through that building and through that newsroom. So many people who went on to be voices of authority on the Northern Ireland news, which of course was the main hub of news anywhere in the UK or Ireland, really did cut their teeth in downtown.
The Downtown Roadshow was popular throughout the summer, with fun to be had at the venues across the area.
Give them all a round of applause.
Downtown Radio Roadshow.
Give her a kiss and she might do it, Disco.
Yes.
To
get them out on the road.
Thank you, madam. Thank you.
It was the kiss that did it. Okay, after all that hard work, Stephen, where would you like to go?
To the pub for a drink.
Good idea. We're off to the pub.
Well, while that was all happening, Mr. Greedy had a competition here at the Roadshow, and it had to be...
Well, it was eating.
Yes, I thought that.
We have the champion cream bun eater in Lisburn this morning is...
Julianne.
And have you ever won a competition before?
Yeah.
So you are a well-known megastar then. Anyone to say hello to very quickly?
I'd like to say hello to everyone in 4th year Wallace.
Right. She has her own supporters club with her. Okay, thanks a lot and congratulations.
Let's press on with the music. Time coming up to 12:24. Here's Rod Stewart. Some guys. Rod Stewart. Some guys have all the luck. I can't believe how lucky we are food-wise today. As I mentioned earlier on when I was on with Ronan Kelly this morning, the people in Andrews very kindly fed us with the best Ulster fries we've had in ages. 2 eggs, pancakes, everything. Now the buns arrived. And this card arrived just a short moment ago from 11 Waterside Hill Street. It says, "Hello, John Paul. Here's an apple tart for you and the crew, just in case you get hungry down there in the sunken garden. Please dedicate a record to all the members of the Bridge Youth Club here in Lisburn, from Bill and Hazel Irvine." Bill and Hazel, nice to hear from you again. Met your son the other day who was down at the station. Hope he got all the information he needed. Thank you very much indeed for the apple tart. We will get tore into that in just a little while. Stephen Walmsley from Dundonald is off around Lisburn trying to win our FAB prize today on the Downtown Radio.
Let's hear more from John Daly and how Downtown fared for getting star guests.
There were loads of people. We were very lucky because we shouldn't have been getting the level of guests that we got. But the reason for it was that we were able to sell more records or influence the charts in a way that somebody in Milton Keynes was unable to do, because because of the audience figures. I remember going to London in 86 to do a series of interviews, and I was treated like royalty. Every record company I went to, they would say, oh, this is John. John works for Downtown, and they have the biggest audience in the UK. And so they were just getting people. Like, they brought me to Top of the Pops to interview Bruce Hornsby, which was amazing. Linda Lusardi had a record out. I walked, not knowing, of course, with my A to Z in my hand. I walked to her granny's house where she was living at the time and interviewed her and went away. And then a number of months later, she was doing something else and she was in Belfast. She came out to Newton Arts and she said, oh, I remember John. John arrived all sweaty at our house, having walked 4 miles from the tube station to get to my granny's. So she said, yes, I'll do that interview. And I happened to mention it at home. And my dad said, oh, right, you're interviewing that Lucinda Cascardi again, are you? He said, the boys on the site seem to like her. They have a lot of photographs of her up on the wall. I said, right. He said, would you do me a favour? And I said, what? He said, what time is she in at? I said, she's in at 11. He said, that's our tea break time. Would you get her to say hello to me? And the boys will be very impressed. And I said, right, I'll see what I can do. So I explained this to her before we started and she thought it was hilarious. And so we're chatting away and I'm asking her about her career and what she's doing and what she's doing next. She says, oh, John, sorry, before you go any further, she said, how's your daddy? And I said, oh, he's fine, thanks, he's in good form. She said, yeah, she said, I love your daddy. She said, and if Pat's listening on the site, she said, hello, and hello to all the other boys on the site as well. And so that night when I went home, he says, ho, 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 child. Lucinda Cascardi, she's great, isn't she?
By 1984, there were experiments in split broadcasting, providing 2 programmes, one on medium wave and another on FM, Double Downtown Radio, with commentary on the Ulster Grand Prix on 1026 and the #1 music show, with all the station's top singles to date as the alternative on FM. Another new voice that year was Stephen Woods.
The biggest thrill that I ever got was washing my car the Thursday before I was due to start on the radio. I was a little blue Fiesta and I was out cleaning it. And on the radio it was Linda Jane on the radio. And I wasn't really paying attention, but the next thing I heard my own voice. And Ronan had recorded a little promo for me. And Ronan had got it scheduled. And Linda Jane, who I have to say I admired very much and I still do, and her achievements in radio, but and she was very nice to me. But there was Linda playing my promo, and at the end of the promo she said, I'm so looking forward to meeting and welcoming Stephen to Downtown. And it always stuck in my head, and it was such a kick. I mean, such a buzz.
One of Stephen's shows was the Sunday afternoon Downtown Countdown.
There are downsides that I must mention to doing a chart show, particularly when you're me. I have the most awful habit when I've got the headphones on of singing along to the song. Now that's fine when you're in a studio all by yourself. In my naivety, what you should also remember is that you're in a live environment, but you're also in a studio which essentially has bugging devices all around. It's called microphones, and those can be accessed from elsewhere in the building. So John Paul Ballantyne, Jippo, thought it would be fun to capture my dulcet tones during the playing of the whichever song. There was Jennifer Rush, there was Shakin' Stevens. I mean, there was a list. Jippo had recorded all these, and remember when you're wearing headphones and you're humming, I mean, it is off key. I'm sounding like a moose in the fog. In my head, it sounds great. In reality, it's horrendous to listen to. So what Jippo did was to put together a compilation of the best bits, and he called the album. And he sold it a little bit like they would sell the old Now That's What I Call Music or the old K-Tel albums, Woods for Winter. And here Stephen sings some of your favourite classic hits like Lipstick, Powder and Paint from Shakin' Stevens, like Jennifer Rush. It was horrendous to listen to.
And you are my man.
Immensely funny. I did get a lot of stick about it from people who knew me, but I got attention.
Do all that I
1986 was the station's 10th birthday.
10 years at the top, downtown 96 FM. We're 10 today, downtown radio.
And a new arrival at that time was Doogie Marshall.
The wonderful thing about Downtown, and this is something that you won't even get today in commercial radio, because Downtown was doing so many different programs in the 80s and the 90s, and I'm talking about specialist programs, whether it was Rock File, whether it was the Soul Show, classical, you name it, we were doing it. And I can remember when I first joined Downtown, been given the task of doing so many different programs, whether it was late night, early morning, afternoon. So you got a crash course in doing so many different styles of radio. And as any good broadcaster will tell you, you have your own style, but you will adapt that to whatever the particular style of program there is that you're doing at the time, which is challenging in itself. And also when you're doing somebody else's program, you cherish the fact that it is their show, and you have to remember that the listener is listening because they like the person that you're filling in for. So there's a whole lot of different complexities and challenges when it comes to doing that sort of radio. But it gave me a great grounding. And what it meant was that apart from finding your feet and discovering who you were also educating yourself and learning so many different genres. And as well as that, you were meeting so many different broadcasters. And I can remember being a young, inverted commas, slick jock, arriving in the studio one Saturday evening when a very talented man was broadcasting called Tommy Sands. And the whole thing about my style of broadcasting was there was never a second of dead air. So I arrived into the studio this particular evening and Tommy was on the air 20 minutes into the programme. And as I arrived in the studio, Tommy has the speakers up full now and he's listening to the music as it's going out, you see. And I came in and I said, excuse me, whatever I was getting. And he said, no, you're okay. And the music finished. Now, to me, in my slick sense, the minute the music would finish, I would be straight in, that was, this is, here we are, blah, 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 blah. Tommy looked at me and he said to me, I love that track. Put his headphones on and opened the microphone and began to broadcast. And all I could think of was, there must have been 5 or 6 seconds of dead air there. But that was the point that I was missing. The silence, almost to a degree, added to the effect that if somebody was enjoying the piece of music the same way he was, it deserved a bit of a pause at the end of it. So you learned things like that from people like Tommy Sands. And the great thing about working for Downtown as well through the 80s, 90s and into the noughties, I had extremely good relationships with the likes of the Lyric Theatre, the Opera House, the Odyssey Arena, etc. Monday night during most of the year would have been first night of the Opera House, whatever was on. Lyric Theatre was Tuesday night. You would have then had a new movie release on a Thursday night somewhere in Belfast. Then you had a splattering of concerts. And one of the privileges of broadcasting is that you get free access. A fabulous opportunity to do things. To be having a cup of coffee with Destiny's Child and half an hour later they're on stage and you're sitting watching them. You know, it's a privileged position to be in.
In a decade on air, Downtown had provided a full service with programmes for all ages for Greater Belfast. That was its first chapter. Chapter 2 begins later that same year, when it was time for the station to go province-wide by extending coverage into the northwest on 96.4 FM at Limavady and 102.4 FM from Sheriff's Mountain. But rather than tune into a continuing Downtown radio, the new and existing listeners heard an updated name for the station. The following year, it was the turn of Omagh and Enniskillen to receive a clear FM signal from Brocher Mountain on 96.6. 24-hour broadcasting became a reality in 1988 with the superstation from London providing a networked service overnight. Jerry Lang first of all ran a record shop by day and broadcast by night before going full-time in the late 80s.
Those were great days when you had record shops. Record shops were great and, because
I'd have been working in the shop and somebody come in and says, have you got such and such a thing? No, where did you hear that? Oh, it was played on Downtown. You know what I mean? Can you get me it? Yeah, not a problem, we'll get it for you. And so there was always that, the radio kept the record shops up to date, and the record shops in helped the radio as well. I presented nearly every programme on Downtown except the religious programme on a Sunday. Because I did everything. I did breakfast at times. I did drive time. Did the weekends. Country show. So it was a mixture of everything, and I really, every kind of different program I did, I really enjoyed it. In those days, probably the biggest feature that I had that was the most successful feature was playing the listeners' top 10. And still to this day, I have a box with the thousands of listeners' top 10s that I got. I still have them. And that's a marvellous database for looking back over what people liked. Was always popular. It became the most popular part of the programme. And that's what radio doesn't have anymore.
That was also the time when radio stations across the UK heard the phrase, use it or lose it. In other words, they should think about providing separate programmes on medium wave and FM on a full-time basis. Elsewhere, the stations had pretty much the same coverage on medium wave as FM, so could split cleanly by keeping their modern music service on FM and aiming this at younger listeners, and launching an oldies channel on medium wave for fans of classic songs and a more conversational approach. Not so straightforward here, as 1026 only covered Greater Belfast, and the West and Northwest only had FM. So, after much hard thinking and conducting research into what existing and unserved audiences would like, the decision was taken to launch a new service on the Belfast FM frequency, 97.4 Cool FM, while keeping the popular Downtown service on 1026, along with the 3 newer FM frequencies in the West and Northwest. As 1990 dawned, this major development was just weeks away. On the appointed date, February the 7th, there were actually 2 Ivan and Richards on the air at the same time. And here's what listeners heard on 97.4.
Bob Marley and the Wailers.
Why do they catch many whales?
Well, I never heard of them catching any, actually. And jamming. We are a sham. We are not here.
This is true. We are but a figment
of your imagination and your radio's persistence. Where are we?
Well, you may think we're on 97.4.
Which is where you're listening at the moment.
Yes, but in reality, we're on 1026 AM.
1026 AM is where we are. If you want to listen to First Edition this morning, retune to 1026 AM.
That's where the papers will be? Yes, in about,
say just a little under 15.
Thereabouts.
Papers will be there. All the other things will be there. And from tomorrow, there's a brand new competition there in this half hour of the programme as well, isn't there?
This is true.
So where do we reach into?
10:26 a.m.
And a momentous time up and coming for 97.4, because as in from 8:30 this morning, Cool FM takes to the airwaves on 97.4. You can listen to them on that frequency. If you'd still like to listen to us, well, we would be delighted to have you on 10:26 a.m.
We'll welcome you with an open arm.
Then at 8:30 a.m. on 97.4.
Good morning and welcome to Cool FM, the new music radio service from Downtown Radio. Broadcasting 19 hours a day on 97.4 FM. We hope you will enjoy our programs, which will feature the music and lifestyle of the 90s. It's just gone 8:30. Stand by for Neil McLeod on The Breakfast Show, and thanks for tuning our way. 97.4.
Good morning, it is 8:30. This is Cool FM, a brand new radio station for a brand new decade.
We built this city.
While Cool FM became the station of the times, Downtown continued to be the station of the place. And on the long-established heritage station, it was time to begin Downtown's Chapter 3 as a full service, but aimed at the over 30 age group, and to return to the original form of the name.
DTRFM, Downtown Radio.
Also in 1990, Johnny Hero had joined the team.
It was the stuff of legend. You know, I mean, I was not a radio nerd, but I'd grown up when radio was everything. You know, in that generation where you couldn't have missed Top of the Pops, and not like now. I mean, there were two outlets on TV, Old Grey Whistle Test, if you liked albums, Top of the Pops, if you liked singles. It's not like now where the music's everywhere. And you needed a decent radio station to introduce you to the new music and specialist music. And Downtown had all the specialist shows. And to me, it was like everything a radio station should be. And when I was in there, you know, walking down the corridor, and Big T would casually say, "All right," and I'm going, and Candy coming in, "Are you okay? You need a hand with anything?" And I'm like, "Whoa, this is mad. This is really mad." I'm not sure if all radio was like that at the time. The atmosphere at Downtown was a big gang. And I know when I was in there, I mean, I was a newbie, you know, but I know that I could have asked anybody in there for help and I'd have got it. You see, Downtown, it was, if you ever aspired to be in radio and had the dream when we were younger, and in Downtown, if my show started at 9 o'clock, I was there from 7, walking up and down the library, digging out tunes. But that was the prep that went in, and that was the love people had for the music. They were so conscientious about what was going out there. That was taken as read. You had a wide knowledge of music, you had enthusiasm for it, you knew what to talk about, because it's not like now where someone hands you a tune and you go, "Oh, I'll have to Google and find out what this is about," and then you can sound like an expert. Then you had to be expert about the stuff you were playing. I mean, it really was, doing the radio then was a labour of love. It was, honestly. I remember one day in particular, it was like, "Hope you're ready to get your photos taken." This is why the cores are coming in at 11. And we had to get the cores out because there was a phone call with Lionel Richie at 11:45 on the show. A number of days, you'd get a call saying, "Listen, Gloria Estefan's available at 5 o'clock for a phoner live." And that's why every day you didn't know what you were getting into. It was brilliant.
It was also an award-winning decade for Downtown. Each year, a drama production would focus on an anniversary, and in 1991, Voices from the Somme, produced by Derek Ray, won a Gold Award at the New York Radio Festival, resulting in a full-page write-up in the Sunday Times magazine.
Pass the goggles along. It's bloody cold.
0 hour is 7:30 a.m.
Dear mother of God. Has anyone a fag?
I'm not taking third leg.
I'm starving. Try to sleep, boys. How could we sleep? It was so deathly quiet. We were all aware of what lay ahead. Few of the guys were more than a shade worried. They thought we were going in too late. Wouldn't it be better going earlier, when it wasn't too late? And what if we didn't take Tipville? It was on our flank. If it didn't fall then, we would be at the mercy of their machine guns. It was talk of disobeying orders, and if we didn't take Tipville, of going out on our own into no man's land, of getting into their trenches somehow, anyhow.
In the 1994 Sony Radio Awards, Downtown Radio has been presented with the Sony Special Award in recognition of its broadcasting skills in Northern Ireland. The talent of Downtown Radio's Jerry Kelly was individually recognised with a Gold Award for his phone-in show, Kelly on the Radio.
Good afternoon, it's Jerry Kelly here with a very special Kelly on the Radio edition. Well, yet another horrific week in the bloody history of Northern Ireland. 24 people killed in just 8 days. The politicians have spoken, the church leaders have spoken, the British and Irish governments have spoken, and even the terrorists who have been carrying out these atrocities have issued their statements. Well, now it's your chance to express your views about what's happening in your country. We'll be here until 2 o'clock, taking your calls on 0247 815050. Please do give us a ring. Our first caller's from Warringstown, that's Caroline. Hello, Caroline.
Hello.
Well, your reaction, your feelings over the past 8-10 days?
Oh, I suppose my reaction is pretty much like the majority of people. Horrendous. I mean, what can you say? Horrendous and shame.
The Sony Radio Awards are judged by a distinguished panel who know what makes award-winning radio.
There was more success in New York with a special award for Downtown's news coverage of the Omagh bombing. It was time too for new FM transmitters to come on air.
Finally, ahead of the weather, a new radio transmitter at Camlock has just gone on air for a test period, providing the South Down area with a Downtown Radio FM service for the first time. The new South Down frequency is 103.1 FM. And the weather forecast, drier tonight and misty overnight, bright for a time tomorrow.
And there was Larne on 97.1, Mid-Antrim on 102.3 and Newcastle on 103.4. By 1996, on all the frequencies, another birthday worth singing about.
Celebrating 20 years downtown.
As part of the celebrations, there was the 20 Town Tour, a major series of outside broadcasts to say thank you to listeners around the province, with Florence Ambrose, as ever, keeping things running smoothly in the guest department. Then, after 20 years in local ownership, the directors of Downtown accepted a takeover bid from Scottish Radio Holdings. And in 1997, Lisa Flavelle and Morris J joined the daytime lineup. The following montage gives a flavour of how Downtown sounded in the late 90s.
This is Downtown Radio.
Now today, I'm going to tackle Star Wars. All of them. Right, we'll do one first. Right. Luke, I am your father. Sounded like the Pope.
Change of use from shop to fat food restaurant.
Oh. So there you are. Yeah, we could go there anytime. They'd welcome us in there with open arms, probably.
George, did you always talk like this?
Fast, because when I was going to the conference, could have said your word, the nurse said, come, you're going very fast. And she said, slow down. I said, I can't slow down. And from that day on, I'm still going fast. And I've got
Are they all fast talkers in your family?
No, well, by me, daughter, she was very fast. We did it, I love so well.
I have one very, very stern question for you this morning, Ronan Kelly, and you have to answer truthfully.
What?
Are Downtown interested in buying Larne?
No, we've already bought another team.
Who have they bought?
It's the video team.
And apparently John Rosborough is painting the strips onto the wee players right now.
That's right.
Did I tell you about this wonderful competition that we got for you where we could be flying you globally as of next Monday? Did I mention it yesterday? I did, didn't I? I'll mention it later as well, but you will want to know.
And you're very welcome to Ken's New Country from Downtown. I'm Ken Bruce, and it's nice to be back with you again to bring you another 2 hours of today's top new country.
Once again, welcome to Monday Night's Rockfell with me, Linda Cullen. This week's show, like last, I'll be playing tracks from earlier this year. So if you like Redwood, Grip Dog Drill, Pigeon Plant, A and Cheeky Monkey, keep your ears peeled.
Good evening, everybody. This is Alfred Burrows with our Concert Choice programme.
Harry Castle's with you through until 2 o'clock to take your calls and anything you want to talk about. We have a lady from Omagh. Good afternoon.
As you know, we're living in the Omagh area. We've just actually had another bomb scare called here in the town, and we actually had to leave our place of worship. And really just what I wanted to say is whoever, if someone out there has called this in to the security forces or whatever, do they not realise the trauma that the people of this area are trying to come to terms with? I mean, I think they're just really sick.
I think that's an apt description of them.
Hello, this is Jackie Flavelle, and you're very welcome to Jackie's Jazz and Blues.
My name is Tommy Sands, and I hope you have the time, taste and temperament to stay with me for the next while, and while away, while of an evening, the best of folk, tradition, music, song, crack and diversion. And tonight, we're coming to you live from the Fiddler's Green Festival in Rosborough. And listen to that crowd roar, lots of great music.
Are you here at the Straw Market every day?
Every day to the Straw Market, correct.
What about Sunday?
Sunday I goes to church. Serve my Lord. And God bless you all who come to the Bahamas Island to help us and buy it from us. That's a blessing. God bless you. Yes.
The President chatting with the Lord Mayor at the moment, and he is about to speak.
I got a letter from 13-year-old Brian from Belfast. Here's the answer to your question. No. As far as I know, an alien spacecraft did not crash in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. And Ryan, if the United States Air Force did recover alien bodies, they didn't tell me about it either, and I want to know.
This is Downtown Radio.
The Belfast Good Friday Agreement was published in April 1998, and Harry Castles presented a special phone-in with Today FM in Dublin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to a special 2-hour cross-border phone-in on the political agreement reached in Belfast on Good Friday. For the first time, province-wide Downtown Radio is linking with Ireland's national independent station Today FM. So we'll be taking calls from listeners in Northern Ireland and the Republic. In Downtown Radio, this is Harry Castles, and the number to call, if you're in Northern Ireland, is 01247 81.
As the 90s came to a close, sadly, John Greer and Derek Marsden passed away. First edition came to the end of a highly successful 18 years, and Ronan Kelly returned with Claire McCollum on news, Roy Rennox on sport, and Neil McLaren with traffic and travel. The run-up to the year 2000, the millennium, was marked by a 27-hour continuous countdown, and thankfully the Y2K bug was nowhere to be seen. Just before Easter that year, we were devastated to hear that Linda Jane had died suddenly. In the autumn of 2001, a local DAB multiplex opened, run by Score Digital, a subsidiary of SRH. Both Downtown and Cool became available on this, returning the former to crystal clear sound in its original heartland, if you had a DAB radio.
New names to Downtown in the 2000s were Bill Simons, Caroline Fleck, Siobhan McGarry, Robert Skates, Paul Orr, Derek Flood, Kenny Tosh, Paul Francis, Kevin McAllister, Owen Larkin, and the man with the rich nighttime voice, also heard on the R, David Gordon.
From the newsroom of Northern Ireland's biggest commercial broadcaster, Downtown Radio, Cool FM News.
In 2006, Scottish Radio Holdings was acquired by EMAP, and in the following year by Bauer, a family-owned company based in Hamburg. And Henry Owens took over the programming reins, followed by Eddie West. By this stage, it was the beginning of Chapter 4. The range of programmes that gave the station its full-service character had been declining in favour of a streamlined music station approach. One of the presenters from earlier days returned in 2011.
George Jones. Afternoon Drive on Downtown Radio.
There you go, simple as that. How you doing, chums? Lovely to be with you. And most of all, it's lovely to be back home. Where it all started? Somebody said to me I'd be sitting here 35 years later. I know you're all going and you look like it too, you know. I'll try not to sound like it, I promise. Thanks to Owen for a brilliant show as always. Welcome to the new Drive Show. I'll be with you right through to 7 o'clock each night, 6 o'clock on Fridays. If you can stand it and you don't mind it, give us a call, please. Send us a text. I'd love to hear your wee voices. Right across Northern Ireland again, it's lovely to be with you. In your houses, in the car, doing the homework, whatever you fancy, give us a call.
Others to return were Country Ken Bruce, and I myself, to take it easy again on Sunday nights. A new studio in the Foyleside Shopping Centre allowed programmes to come regularly from the Northwest from 2012, and one of the original Day One voices, Candy Devine, decided to return to her native Australia in October 2013. By then, breakfast was in the hands of Gary Miles and Kirsty McMurray.
Degrees. Downtown Radio, Cool FM News. I'm Kirsty McMurray. It's 8:06.
How's my wee downtown diva?
I'm doing all right, thanks. How's
you all set up and ready for your show tomorrow night?
Nearly. A bit of prep to do this afternoon once I've finished.
I'm going to help you with that because, of course, you've got the non-stop 80s.
Non-stop 80s from 9 to midnight Saturday night.
After Siobhan.
After Siobhan, yes.
See, I don't think you are a diva, but McGarry, she's a diva.
I wouldn't say either of us are divas.
I'm only kidding.
You know, to be fair.
It's only a joke. It's only a joke.
That's okay.
Right, do you want to play a wee game?
Oh, what are you going to get me to do this time?
I've got 5 songs from the 80s. You've got to identify them.
No problem.
All right, now listen. I thought it was a wee bit unfair before because you got quite a high score and you didn't get a prize.
Oh, do I get a prize?
I've got a prize for you, but you've got to get more than 80%.
Okay.
Okay, which means 4 out of 5.
Right.
When I went to school anyway. Now, a special present for you, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the man himself to tell you what it is.
I will get you a photograph, get it signed and get it out to you as soon as we get some new ones taken, so...
That's good old Robert.
Kirsty's love of country music would soon have its own home, because in 2015 a whole new radio station came into being, based on the almost 40-year success and name of the programme Downtown Country.
today's country and the legends. We asked you what you wanted to hear.
Lady Antebellum.
Just small thing. Alan Jackson. Don't rock the jukebox. Maybe a country song.
Downtown Country.
Hi, I'm Mark Mahaffey, Managing Director of Downtown Radio and Cool FM. And today I'm delighted to be the first voice on air on our brand new radio station. Downtown Country is totally unique. Not only is it Northern Ireland's first digital-only radio station, but it is also UK's only digital country music station. For almost 40 years, Downtown Radio has had a love affair with country music. It is ingrained into the fabric of our station, our culture and our way of life here in Northern Ireland. With over 100,000 tuning in to our market-leading country output each week, we know just how popular country music is. Downtown Radio was actually the first commercial station to launch here back in 1976, and so it is entirely fitting and appropriate that it is the first to launch a digital spin-off. Downtown Country will broadcast on digital radio, online and on our dedicated Downtown Radio app to a potential audience of 1.5 million people. Our exciting lineup will feature a 24/7 mix of contemporary and classic American, UK and Irish country music. So, without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to announce the legend to officially open Downtown Country. He's been here at Downtown Radio from day one, way back in 1976, and his market-leading evening programme has actually been the inspiration for our new radio station. It is fitting that he is the man to officially launch Downtown Country. He is, of course, Big T.
All right, you ready? Coming down the speakers, getting loud. We're gonna do this thing. Sounds best when turned up loud. This is Downtown Country.
Hey, with an introduction like that, who needs jingles? I was the managing director as well. Managing director of Downtown Radio, Cool FM, and Downtown Country. You're more than welcome. This is country music. This is Lady Antebellum. Guess what the song's called? It's Downtown.
All the parties on the streets are talking sweet.
In March 2020, another FM transmitter came on air at Carnmoney near Belfast. And in December 2023, the famous 293 transmissions became consigned to the history books when the 1026 kHz transmitter at Knockbrecken was switched off, having been superseded by DAB and online listening. There was very sad news from Australia in October 2024 when we heard that Candy had passed away, to be followed just a few weeks later by Big T. Both had deservedly been inducted into the Irish Radio Hall of Fame. Now, in the era of social media, smart speakers and the like, in March 2026, the Downtown lineup is Gary Miles and Glenn Pavis at breakfast, Declan Wilson mid-morning, Owen Larkin in the afternoon, Neil McClelland at drive, then Kirsty McMurray and Paul Orr, with David Coleman, Lisa McHugh, Owen Beers, Ivana Maxted and Hannah Kirkpatrick at the weekend. With the benefit of hindsight, how does today's content controller Stuart Robinson see the station?
Well, I suppose that the two main things that have kind of spiked out of Downtown's history was the creation of Cool FM in 1990, which helped it retain a huge audience in the eastern side of Northern Ireland, whilst offering audiences an alternative at that time. And then with the creation of digital radio around 10 years ago, we were able to launch Downtown Country, and that again was able to allow us to target with a service audiences who had come into Downtown very much for its country genre over the years, but to give them that 24/7. So I think those two key moments in Downtown's history, looking back on it with the benefit now of 50 years of hindsight, have probably enabled the station to get to this sort of broadcasting milestone, because as we all know, in the radio business and the media business nowadays, not many stations, networks get to celebrate 50 years on the air. So I think Downtown has done really well to get to this point, but it's been largely due to some of those factors that we maybe didn't realise even at the time how significant of a role they would play years into the future.
Downtown is on the verge of leaving its home of over 50 years, the Kiltonga Radio Centre, for a shiny new location at City Quays in Belfast. But why the move? And what are the feelings about it?
I know, it's sort of mixed, isn't it? On a personal level as well, because people will always think, where do they live? Where do their kids go to school? So there's that element of it for the people who work here that they'll consider as well. But we know that it's the right move now at the right time from the business perspective. And as I'm sure you'll have covered on this programme, John, downtown was placed here very, very specific reason at a very specific time in Northern Ireland's past. And again, the station and the studio set up here at Kiltonga, just outside Newton Ards, was very much the right thing at the right time. Now, 50 years on, this little broadcasting hub no longer owes us anything. It is the right time for a business that's looking to the future, a business that's looking to compete in a digital world, that we move onwards and upwards. And I think the move to Belfast City Centre has come really nearly poetically just at a time in downtown's history where it feels, like 50 years here have been great and have been well served. But now we look to the next 50 years, and we'll be broadcasting very soon from City Quays 3, which is a building that a lot of people will know. It's one of the highest buildings in Belfast, and we were right up there at the top, overlooking Belfast and way beyond across much of Northern Ireland. You can see from up there on the top floor. So it seems like a great place for a radio station. There's a lot of agencies and commercial advertisers and people like that who will then be close to the station, so that's important in the commercial sense, that the radio station has those really close connections and inroads into the future. But it also places us in the heart of where the audience is at too. Now, we can mobilise ourselves quickly and easily to get out to whether it's breaking news stories happening in the greater Belfast area very quickly. We can also be out and about around city centre when there's gigs, when there are things that the radio stations are involved in. We're no longer having to trek. We're right in the middle of where the action is. We wouldn't have wanted to be there 50 years ago. It wouldn't have been right, as I think everybody would understand. But again, 50 years on, it feels like this is the right move at the right time for downtown.
In the concluding minutes, time to reflect on downtown's 50 years.
Happy days, fondly remembered, but, there's no going back, is there?
No. And if we went back now, it wouldn't work.
Wouldn't resonate, would it?
No.
No, it's as simple as that. You can't get away from your fate, as they say.
Nope, they're on the end of your legs.
It was exciting all the time, and it was a family. We really created a family, there's no doubt about that. Everybody enjoyed going in there and working.
There was a massive disadvantage in many ways being out of Belfast and in Newton Ards, but that was absolutely outweighed by the advantage of not being in Belfast. I think if it had become metropolitan, that's the one thing it never became, a metropolitan Belfast station. It became a station for Northern Ireland, and most of Northern Ireland is rural, agricultural, likes country music, likes tractors, and loves God, and that was all reflected in downtown's output.
In summing up, downtown, if I was to turn back the clock, I wouldn't change a thing. Right. It was a wonderful experience, a wonderful opportunity, a career-changing opportunity for me, and I look back with a great deal of happiness.
Big, massive debt of gratitude to downtown for the platform the opportunity it gave, the platform it provided for people to go from strength to strength in the media. That's fantastic.
It was just a great place to be. It was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. I loved everything about it. I loved the OBs. I loved searching for music. I loved coming up with ideas. And do you know what was brilliant? We were given great license to do anything.
It was like being in a band that was your family and part of the community. It was part celebrity, part royalty, part cheeky uncle. That's what it was like. And it'll never be matched, never.
They say it's progress. I mean, the way things go, the way the studios change, the way the technology changes. I mean, I still do a wee bit of broadcasting, and I work on a small station. It has changed, immensely from our day. Absolutely changed immensely. I just think maybe, that wouldn't be the same crack, perhaps. We had some fun in our day. The days we were on the radio, the crack was mighty.
Downtown was looked upon as a breath of fresh air because of the informality it brought to broadcasting, a buoyancy to broadcasting. It brought a liveliness to it And it brought humour.
People knew we were approachable, so they could ring up any time and talk to us and feel they weren't, being talked down to or anything like that. It was great.